Amongst scholars, the Big Bang is the widest accepted theory for the creation of the universe because so many of the mathematical calculations and confirmed predictions support the idea that the universe sprang into existence at a finite point in time, approximately 13.75 billion years ago. Opponents of the Big Bang argue that the biggest problem with the theory is the idea that the universe simply sprang into existence out of nothingness. How can everything we see today simply have popped into existence? And also, how did the universe become so big so quickly? And what exactly is the universe? Many highly respected scholars are now theorizing that the universe is in fact a simulation or virtual construct similar to the virtual worlds we generate using computers. What you are about to hear in this video is the only theory that explains how the universe arises from an eternal field of energy that is mathematically encoded in order to simulate the occurrence of the Big Bang. To put it plainly, the universe is a virtual construct that only appears to have popped into existence at a finite point in time. The science and mathematics of the Big Bang is not wrong. The underlying theory of how it all unfolded is flawed. Let's call this new theory the eternal energy theory of creation. Before the physical universe we see today appears to pop into existence, roughly 13.75 billion years ago, the eternal energy that creates everything we see now existed only as a field of static or stationary energy. Energy that is held in a perfect equilibrium. This eternal energy can be mathematically expressed or quantified and is in fact the source of all intelligence. This is why we can describe the universe using mathematical laws. It is because of the fundamental nature of this energy. This primordial energy creates beings who can evolve to understand the nature of the energy that created them. In this very same way, we humans are trying to create artificial intelligence based on who we are. In order to follow the contents of this video, you need to know that the Fibonacci series is creating a pattern of 60 numbers that recycle into infinity. When these 60 numbers are placed around the circumference of a circle, they create a perfect human clock. The Fibonacci series itself represents a growth pattern found in nature, and in this video I will show you how these 60 numbers codify a primordial energy that determines how the universe itself manifests as a mathematical construct. The primordial energy takes up zero space and has no physical form. It exists only as mathematical information. It is eternal and cannot be created or destroyed. But, like all other forms of energy that is derived from it, it can be converted. The Big Bang is the collapse of this wave of eternal information into virtual particles by an observer. How does it all unfold? The eternal field of energy is mathematically encoded and can be quantized into packets of information or waves of information. These quanta or packets of energy/information are in fact what gives rise to our notion of time. The mathematical information in the wave of energy can be divided into 60 units as seen in this image. We can then use our concept of numbers and the Fibonacci sequence to mathematically decode and quantify those 60 units. The Fibonacci series is in fact creating waves or cycles of 60 numbers that repeat into infinity. Why does the Fibonacci series generate this pattern? Because it is reflecting the underlying nature of the energy. Our understanding or concept of numbers is fundamentally derived from this underlying field of energy/information. This quanta of energy is packed with mathematical data. We humans are created from these waves of energy. This is why we evolved to measure time the way we do. It is because this is the fundamental nature of existence. Like water crystals, we are simply following the underlying pattern of the molecules and atoms that created us. Nothing is random. Look at the pattern in this image. We calculate time using 60 units. We have broken our day into 24 hours based on one revolution of the Earth upon its own central axis. As you can see in this image, this wave of energy also produces a difference of 24 when you split it down its own central axis. Amazingly, the 60 units are also divided into 12 groups. Look at the pattern created by the 5s and 0s. They perfectly mimic our human clocks with its 60 seconds and 12 hours. Look at the placement of the 4 zeros. They conform perfectly with our 4 cardinal points. This is not because this wave of energy is copying us. No, we have evolved to mathematically decode our existence based upon this underlying pattern. We are conforming to the underlying pattern of the energy that created us. There is a ton of mathematical information encoded into this wave of energy, but I will not cover all of that in this video. See my YouTube channel, I have dozens of other videos exploring this Fibonacci 60-digit cipher in more depth. In this video, I mainly want to focus on how this wave of static energy or mathematical information collapses into the virtual particles that simulate the Big Bang and generates the virtual construct of the physical universe. Look closely at this single quanta of static energy/information and examine the relationship between the 60 numbers. Remember that these numbers are simply our way of expressing or quantifying the underlying energy. We evolved to use numbers in this way because we are simply following the pattern of the underlying energy that created us. In the physics used to explain the Big Bang, there are 4 fundamental forces, those being the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, the electromagnetic force, and gravity. Physicists believe that before the Big Bang, or right at the moment of creation, all of these forces were unified into one single entity, or primal force. Examine the relationship between the numbers in this 60-digit wave. Can you see that all the numbers diagonally opposite each other all add up to a perfect 10 or 0? For example, an 8 is always opposite a 2, 9 plus 1 equals 10, 7 plus 3 equals 10, etc. The numbers, which quantify the underlying relationship between the units of energy in this wave, always sum up to a perfect 10 or 0 out. We could say that there is a natural force of attraction running across the nucleus of this circle between these numbers. The 7 is attracted to the 3, the 6 is attracted to the 4, etc. This magnetic attraction creates a strong nuclear force between these bits of energy. But if we look at the 0s and the 5s, here we can see that the force is not as strong. 2 zeros add up to 0, 2 5s are exactly the same, and they can cancel each other out as well. 5 minus 5 is 0. There is therefore a very weak force between the 5s and 0s. The relationship between these 60 numbers codify the underlying relationship between the bits of energy. The magnetic force between the numbers creates the strong and weak forces running through the nucleus of this wave of energy. If you study physics, you will know that the electromagnetic force consists of a magnetic wave and an electric wave running perpendicular to each other. Here we can see the magnetic force between the numbers, but where is the electric force? If we rotate this wave 90 degrees and express these 60 numbers as a graph, you will see the electrical nature of this wave, as seen in this image. Here you can see how these 60 numbers reflect an energy between them that rises and falls in a wave-like pattern, running perpendicular to the magnetic wave. Now we can see how this energy is electromagnetic in nature, and how it gives rise to the strong and weak nuclear forces found in the standard model of physics. But where is gravity? And what is gravity? An object's gravitational force is directly proportional to its mass. That is Newtonian physics. But where is the mass of this wave of energy? This circular wave is in a state of perfect balance, and it has no mass. It takes up 0 space, and it has no electrical charge. It is in a state of perfect equilibrium and can only be expressed or understood mathematically as a wave of information. But look once again at the relationship between the numbers in this circle. If I split this circle down its central axis, one side equals 152 and the other side equals 128. 128 divided by 152 equals 0.8421. 0.8421 cubed equals 0.5972. Go and Google the mass of the Earth. Incredibly, not only does this 60-digit Fibonacci circle create a perfect human clock, but it also mathematically encodes the mass of the Earth when cubed. This mathematical difference between the two halves of the information in this circle is what gives rise to the gravitational force once this wave of energy/information collapses. This 60-digit wave or quanta of energy contains all the fundamental forces. How does this eternal mathematical wave of information manifest as the physical universe? In quantum physics, there is something called wave-particle duality. When physicists try to study a wave of light, the wave collapses, and the light appears to behave like a particle. You can Google this phenomena of light, simply search for the double-slit experiment. Light and even subatomic particles like electrons can behave as a wave or a particle, and only when you try to observe the wave does it collapse and behave like a particle. This is exactly how the universe exists on a macro level. It is both a wave and a particle, and only when you try to observe the universe do you see it as a particle. This is the eternal wave-particle dual nature of the universe. This is how the universe exists for all of eternity. In the wave form, it takes up zero space and experiences no time. It is simply energy that can only be expressed or quantified using mathematics. It exists only as eternal information. When an observer interacts with the universe, the wave function collapses and they see the universe as physical particles. The wave of mathematical information has now collapsed into virtual particles. The universe now appears to physically exist to us, the observers. The circular wave that was held in perfect equilibrium has now collapsed into this triangular particle that has a tiny amount of mass with no electrical charge. This triangle of energy is no longer in perfect balance. The forces that were once all acting in harmony across the nucleus of the circle are now being skewered across this triangular shape. Look at this image. This is the Fibonacci wave of information that has collapsed into a triangle of energy. There is no mathematical explanation or reason why this circle of information can so perfectly create a triangle in which the square of the hypotenuse is exactly equal to the squares of the opposite two sides. No mathematician can explain how this happens. This is superintelligent programming at work. In the standard model of physics, this unstable triangle of energy with no charge is called a neutron. It is made up of 3 quarks of energy that balance each other out, thus having no electrical charge. Effectively, our stable or static wave of energy/information has collapsed into a virtual particle that appears to have a tiny mass and no electrical charge. This neutron is unstable and quickly beta-decays into a proton and an electron. During this process of beta-decay, a photon of light is released. According to subatomic physics, there are a few other processes that happen during the beta-decay of a neutron, but we will only focus on the ones that are really fundamental to the bigger picture, which is the neutron beta-decays into a proton and an electron. This is now a hydrogen atom. During this process, a photon of light is released. You must bear in mind that we are not only describing what happens to one of these waves of information. There is an infinite sea of these waves that create what physicists would call a quantum field. All of these waves collapse at roughly the same time and are converted into quark neutrons. These neutrons all beta-decay and convert into protons and electrons while releasing photons of light. These protons and electrons form all the hydrogen that physicists see when they study the early universe. The photons that are released during this process is the light of the Big Bang. When scientists look back to the beginning of the early universe, right after what they call the Big Bang, they see a universe that is made up almost entirely of hydrogen gas. This hydrogen gas now collapses under the weight of the new force of gravity to form the first stars and galaxies. In this theory, we can see where all that hydrogen gas comes from. From this point on, the standard model of physics can explain how the rest of the universe comes into existence. These first stars explode, and all the other heavier elements on the periodic table are formed from the stardust. The light from the Big Bang, what scientists call the cosmic microwave background radiation, or the CMBR, is the light from the photons that are released during the beta-decay of the primordial neutron quarks into protons and electrons or hydrogen gas. The universe, therefore, did not magically pop into existence out of thin air, but does in fact exist for all eternity as coded mathematical information. When observed, this information collapses into virtual particles that only appear to be physically real to us. Our brains take the mathematical information coded into the photons of light released during the collapse of the quark neutrons into hydrogen gas and use that information to construct the virtual universe we see around us. Think of an avatar running around inside a virtual world in a computer game. When those avatars interact with the objects around them, the objects appear to be real or have physical substance relative to the avatar. For example, inside a game, an avatar can sit on a chair as though it were a real chair. We know that the objects, and even the space inside a virtual world on a computer, is not real, but simply made up of coded mathematical information. These objects only appear to be physically real relative to the avatars because the avatars are made up of the same coded information. That is exactly how our universe is created and why the universe appears to be physically real to us. It is because we are made out of the same code that generates the objects around us. If you think about this logically, this is the only way a universe could ever exist. If a universe actually existed in space, where would that space end? And what would be outside that space? And so on into infinity. A universe can only ever exist as coded information which takes up zero space. Where is all this information stored? It is stored within waves of time for all eternity. According to the law of conservation of information, information cannot be created or destroyed. Information is eternal. Mass is not a physical entity, but only a mathematical property derived when the circular waves of information collapses into the triangular virtual particles or quarks that are used to construct the virtual world we see around us. These particles only have mass relative and directly proportional to each other. How does the universe become so big so quickly, and if the universe is eternal, why do we see it as only coming into existence 13.75 billion years ago? This is because relative to us, the wave of energy collapses into the virtual particles at roughly the same moment. The entire universe comes into existence at roughly the same point in time and is almost instantly large. When we look back to the point of creation, we are not looking across space, but only back in time. The universe does not appear to pop into existence at a finite point in space, but only at a finite point in time. Why is that time 13.75 billion years ago? The universe is in fact eternal, but only appears 13.75 billion years old relative to us because our concept of time is based on the underlying pattern of the wave of information that created us. The number 13.75 billion years is a meaningless concept because the unit of 1 second is only relative to us and has no objective value. We have taken an infinite circle of time and divided it into units that are relative only to ourselves. Look at this image. If I take a circle and give it a circumference of 86,400 seconds, which is what we humans have done. We have taken one revolution of the Earth upon its own central axis relative to the Sun, and we have divided the circumference of that circle into 86,400 units. A circle with circumference of 86,400 will have a radius of 13,750. This is why we see a universe that is 13.75 billion years old. We have simply scaled up our time frame to billions of years. If the universe is in fact eternal, what does the value of 1 second or 1 billion years even mean? If I gave you a chocolate that is infinitely large and I asked you how big is one block of that chocolate, what would your answer be? One tiny crumb of a chocolate that is infinite in size would mean that the crumb itself is infinitely large. It would only have a size relative to another crumb. If the universe is eternal, 1 second and 13.75 billion years are both infinitely large. The number 13.75 is simply a ratio. It is the radius of time if we make the circumference 86,400. Time itself has no objective meaning, and the universe exists for all eternity as both a wave and a particle. The universe does not exist in space, but is only saved as coded mathematical information stored within waves or cycles of time. These cycles or waves of time collapse and form the physical universe we see around us when we become conscious and try to observe the universe. The universe is therefore only a mathematical construct or simulation. The science and mathematics of the Big Bang is right, but the underlying theory itself is wrong. The universe did not randomly pop into existence out of thin air. The universe is not a physical object sitting in space. The universe is a matrix of coded mathematical information programmed to generate the virtual world we see around us. How did I find all of this? I was searching for God and I stumbled across a 216-digit matrix hidden inside sacred geometry. That discovery then led me to all of this. I feel as though I was being guided by a higher power. I believe that the eternal information or energy that creates the universe is intelligent and conscious, and that this is the force that gives rise to intelligent conscious beings inside the universe. We are made in the image of our Creator. See my older videos if you want to follow my path, and if you want high-resolution images of all this, see the links to the free online documents attached. You can also support my theory by purchasing copies of my books on Amazon. I have a set of 3 books that chronicle my journey towards enlightenment. The books are very straightforward, and I feel that they represent the pure and unbiased version of this information as it was being revealed to me. As soon as I discovered something, I would quickly publish my findings in order to preserve my intellectual rights. They are therefore the purest form of this information, untainted by too much overthinking. The first book was published 10 years ago in August 2013. What does this pattern of 216 numbers have to do with the virtual nature of creation, you might ask? If the universe is indeed a mathematical construct being simulated through the collapse of waves of eternal information into virtual particles, then it implies that the universe is an intelligent design. The codes which create the virtual worlds we find on our computers do not magically write and program themselves. Some very smart people design and program those worlds. If the universe itself is created from an encoded matrix, then there must be a super-intelligent programmer. The same Fibonacci 60-digit wave of information, which creates a perfect human clock, and also collapses into the triangle in which the square of the hypotenuse is exactly equal to the squares of the opposite two sides. Those same 60 numbers also generate a matrix of 216 digits when entered into the sacred geometric symbol of Metatron's cube. Why is this important? Because Metatron is said to be the highest archangel and second only to God. In mythology, it is said that Metatron is the scribe of God and holds all the secrets to creation. The universe appears to be created using mathematical laws and geometry. Metatron's cube is said to contain all 5 of the Platonic solids and is the most revered of all sacred geometric symbols. In the Kabbalah, it is said that God's secret hidden name contains 216 letters. When you consider the fact that in ancient times, numbers were used as letters in a practice known as gematria, you can easily see why this pattern of 216 numbers found in Metatron's cube are so intriguing. So, is the universe a simulation created using a matrix of coded information stored for all eternity inside waves of time? And is this pattern of 216 numbers the signature of our super-intelligent designer? If I am right, then the answer to those questions can be found in my 3 books and in the story of how all of this was revealed to me. Thank you for your time. Please subscribe and share this video with others as a form of speaking the secret 216-letter hidden name out loud. Legend says this will usher in the golden age of humanity.